Welcome in. Thanks so much for joining me. When I was a kid, I used to really like the children's fable or story, The Tortoise and the Hare. I'm guessing most of you have heard of this, as I'm sure it's been translated into many languages, and it's kind of timeless. But if you haven't heard of it, yeah, go do a search. And it's not only a wonderful children's tale, I found it to be sort of like a Dharma teaching or an instruction for life, right? And it's something I remember again and again. And basically, to shorten the story, it's a race between a hare, a rabbit, and a tortoise. And obviously the rabbit is way too overconfident in the story, and they think I got this in the bag. There's no way this tortoise can beat me. So it sort of takes its time, meanders, hangs out a little bit, has some sidetracks, and eventually loses to the tortoise because it sort of, has some intensity in the beginning, and then it sort of says, I don't need that kind of intensity, or I can't sustain that anymore. And again, due to overconfidence and intensity, actually ends up losing, and the tortoise passes the hare to the hare's surprise. And of course, there's lots of analogies for this. Slow and steady wins the race is a phrase I've heard, and obviously there can be arguments that is not always the case, but I've really taken that story to heart over my lifetime, and I think. I don't know. I feel sometimes there's a reason things come into our life and they kind of resonate with us. And, how does this relate to meditation practice? I'm sure some of you are already connecting the dots. Obviously, slow and steady is often way more sustainable than quick and intense. But basically, I just call this, understanding how we work with sustainability in our meditation practice, and that intensity often works against us. And so intensity can come in a lot of different forms. One form that I see often is, those of us who get into meditation or the Dharma younger and it really resonates with us, or at any age. And we become a little bit like one of my teachers, Pakchok Rinpoche. He says we become like burning plastic. What happens to plastic when you light it on fire? When you light it on fire, it burns kind of very brightly, and there's an intensity to it, but it's quick and it's over really fast, and there's no more plastic to burn. It just sort of, it's gone. So I really liked that analogy he used. He would tell students, who were often quite intense about the Buddhist path and really gung ho and really wanted to, become enlightened now, right? Which is a beautiful aspiration. He would say, "Don't be like burning plastic." So this was another great analogy, I think, that related to the tortoise and hare, the slow and steady approach, or what I'm calling sustainability over intensity. So that's a certain kind of an intensity. Another intensity that I'm just pointing out here, because you may recognize it in yourself, is an intensity to sort of get somewhere, or that there's some kind of special experience we should be having in meditation, instead of just working with our effort and practice, instead of just showing up each day and being with our minds, being with our experience, and learning to approach our experience with more mindfulness and awareness and compassion. And to me, that's another kind of intensity, because we're constantly wishing we're somewhere we're not. We're constantly, projecting we should be in this sort of elusive meditative state or calmness or, some spiritual experience we read about. And, on the level of aspiration, there's nothing wrong with that. We should aspire to these things. But on a practical level, it creates this intensity that takes us away from sustainability, from just showing up and doing our practice on a regular basis. Another way I often see intensity is kind of what you wouldn't normally think of as intensity, but I would say more a struggle with confidence or genuine confidence in practice, sort of a sense of, you know, I'm never doing this right, or um, it's kind of related to the other one in the sense of like we're not getting what we want or getting what we think we should get, but there's kind of a defeated attitude in this. There's a sense of low confidence, a sense of, I'm never going to do it, or how am I going to ever, realize the Dharma, or become awake, or, whatever our goal is through meditation. And there's a kind of intensity in that because there's a pushiness. There's a sense of, I don't know how to say it. It's not exactly like the tortoise, not exactly like the hare or the rabbit, but it's this sense of immediacy, and there's not much patience there. There's this sense of like impatience with ourself, impatience with the practice, impatience with, maybe even the ideas that are shared in traditional Buddha Dharma. Like, how am I going to do that? That sounds way too lofty, or I don't believe in that. That sounds, ridiculous. To me, there's an intensity around that because there's a pushiness, and there's a lack of an ability to just be with the moment, to be with ourselves. Now, again, no need to take. I'm not trying to attack anyone listening to this. These are kind of things I've experienced, states I've gone through of intensity, and instead, I've learned that sustainability and kind of really being the tortoise is really important, in just the sense of consistency. Making sure our practice is sustainable, that we're not going to overwhelm ourselves. That's another part of intensity, like just doing way too much, or instead of practicing every day, we just practice a bunch one day. I'm more of a fan, you can do it however you want, but I'm more of a fan of, actually just breaking that up into 7 days and practicing, less, but more consistently. And so, I'm sure there's many other ideas you can also think of in relation to how your meditation practice can become more sustainable. Part of this, and why I mentioned sort of the intensity first, is we have to root out these behaviors or these ways of being that are actually subverting our efforts of sustainability. We have to notice, okay, where am I bringing intensity where it's not necessary, right? Of course, if intensity comes from perseverance and joy, that's a different thing, right? And I don't know if I would quite call that intensity. I would just call that joy and perseverance. But until that point, we need something sustainable. We need something doable. And this is often what's fighting against us when we're struggling with consistency in practice, or we're feeling, defeated in our meditation practice, or that we're not getting anywhere, or that, I don't know, we just start to feel low self-confidence in our meditation. Take a look back at sustainability. Develop some strategies for how you're going to bring more sustainability, how you can slowly root out any of these kinds of forms of intensity, and just see them as, obviously kind of harmful to your practice and your overall confidence. You're growing over time, but also it's just not sustainable. And see if you can let some of them go, right? So if you notice a sense of, for me, often it shows up nowadays as like, I might finish a session of meditation and feel like I was really distracted in that particular session, or sort of aloof. And this sense of like not feeling a certain kind of groundedness or openness. And this doesn't happen to me that much anymore, but once in a while it happens. And I just mean that I get caught in that, right? So I get caught in like, oh, I didn't experience what I think I should have, right? To me, that's a kind of intensity. It's a kind of pushiness of like this desire to experience something that I think is right, but who's saying it's right, right? So in some of my other recent content, I described how we cultivate confidence in our practice. And for me, confidence doesn't really include like how I feel in a given meditation practice. Like that changes all the time. And why would I want to make that a point of reliance or something to use as a touchstone, right? So anyways, that might be something you might want to check out. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you. I just want to share a couple ideas here. What helps you to create that sustainability over intensity, and how do you navigate um, discerning kind of an intensity that takes the steam out of your practice or kind of brings more stress than there needs to be, versus a kind of perseverance and energy in the practice that's not necessarily intensity, but there can be not only confidence but stability, right? So yeah, I'd love to hear from you. If you want to comment here, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify or another podcast platform I'm sharing this on, feel free to reach out to me at scotttusa.com. You're always also welcome to message me there. And yeah, I just wanted to share a few things and kind of like crowdsource, right? Because I'm always interested too in what ideas can help me to create more sustainability. So maybe some of you out there have some things that are really helpful. So please share. Okay, thanks so much.